Next, we have New York University with Warren, a friendly guide for managers and a friendly guide and manager for freelancers.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jia. This is Lee Roan, FY, and Peiyu. And we're 4 creative technologists from NYU ITP. And this is Warren. Warren is a friendly guide manager for freelancers. But before I tell you more about Warren, I want to tell you a little bit more about us. So Lee Roan and I just recently graduated from ITP. Before graduation, we talked to a lot of our classmates, and a lot of people were talking about what we're going to do next. And this kept on coming up. Freelance, as both a goal and as necessity. So as creative young people, we really crave freedom and control over our own work. And at the same time, a lot of traditional full-time jobs have become independent contract work anyway. We're not alone. 4 million people graduate every year. More and more are becoming freelancers. Joining 53 million freelancers in this country, that's a third of the workforce. And by the year 2020, 40% will become freelancers. Yet a lot of students are not prepared for what it entails to be a freelancer. These are some of the common words that comes up a lot. What is it actually like to be a freelancer? The best thing is you get to set your own schedule. You get to choose who you work for and what you work on. But the worst thing is you can often feel like you're totally alone with no one to guide you. You might have basic questions like how much you charge a client and just not being sure about a lot of things. There are tons of software out there for to-dos, project management, or for invoicing. Here are 4 tools that some more experienced freelancers are already using. But many freelancers actually don't use any management software. That's because none of these software alone addresses the challenges that are unique to young freelancers. They don't provide guidance, and they don't provide emotional support, which a conversational user interface can actually come in handy.
Now let's bring back our Warren, our solution. Warren is a guide and manager for young freelancers. He's able to interact with freelancers via SMS, email, and Facebook Messenger. He's personalized for each individual freelancer. He provides guidance, answers questions, and does management within platforms freelancers are already using. He aims to make the business side of freelancing simple and maybe even a little bit fun by providing a conversational user interface approach to this application. And there are 3 components in Warren. The manager is the core software that includes managing and scheduling client communications, as well as keeping track of expenses and invoices. The guide helps the freelancers through the entire workflow, answers personalized questions, and provides project tips and suggestions. And also, Warren provides daily inspiration support for freelancers to help motivate them. The more freelancers talk to Warren, the better Warren becomes as he gathers more and more information. Warren gets to know the freelancers, like where they are based, how much experience they've had, their work style and personality, as well as their rates. And Warren draws knowledge from existing sources, turning them into playful conversations. If the existing sources don't exist, it will be handled by a human agent. And now let's see it in action. Warren is also interested in knowing the start date and also the end date. And last but not least, the rate of the project. As we can see, George's replies. And here's what Warren needs to note. And a week later, let's see what happens.
All right, after such a cool demo, let's see what's actually behind the Warren. This is the whole system diagram of the Warren looks like. In the front end, Warren has the ability to transfer the same content into different formats in order to have the ability to conversation with users into different platforms. And after the natural language understanding process, Warren will get understand what actual user want and extract some answers from our existing source. If there's no existing answers, our human agency will come up to answer the question, and such a response will add it to the library. And Warren also has the ability to help the user to manage their time and doing scheduling work by directly taking usage of the third-party APIs. And there are all the integrations we already implemented. We want Warren to have the ability to help users to manage their email and SMS, such that we use the poster marker, Facebook Messenger, and Twilio. And in the backend, we use the Google Calendar to manage the time, Slack for our human agency to answer questions online. And we really hope to use LinkedIn in future.
And in our design process, we started with general idea of who this is for and narrowed down our target user based on interviews. We had initially planned to focus on financial management and interview the CPA from Iceland Amber. It helped us gain a lot of insight into how young people manage their finance and work. And we also did long interviews with students who plan to freelance, independent artists, and experienced freelancers in different disciplines. We learned that different people have different kinds of challenges and questions, but they all share the same common workflow. So we started diagramming their workflow. Starting from top, a freelancer most often get clients through email regular, and then they get to know each other, negotiate the project. Then they finalize their relationship with a signed agreement. Once they start working, they manage their expenses and invoices. Finally, they schedule a debrief.
So what are our next steps? We have a working prototype we're user testing right now, and based on that, iterating the product as well as the tone of Warren, and plan to beta launch with limited users. So we're part of BotCamp, and Warren's part of BotCamp. It's started by BetaWorks. It's a top VC firm based out of New York City. We were told by an experienced typographer that a great independent talent must be great at the art of business. So we want to help all freelancers do what they love while conquering the art of business. Thank you.
So, I mean, it wasn't abundantly clear until somebody said we'd already finished integrating it into all these platforms that this is real. Yeah, so I mean, and then you finished obviously by saying you're approaching beta and all of that. But so maybe you could give me some sense of sort of the limitations of where you're at in terms of what are the challenges you've had getting to this point. What's the roadblock now from a technology point of view? I mean, it's amazing that you're this far along. You're head and shoulders above everybody else in terms of getting this to be a real thing, and I'm sort of curious where you're blocked now. So that maybe you could take a hand of that.
So one of the well, first from the design perspective, there's the block of figuring out exactly what is the workflow that can be personalized for each person and based on what kind of work they do. For instance, a photographer works very differently. Like their work scope is very different from an illustrator. So figuring out how to generalize that and tweaking the prototype is one challenge. In terms of technology, there are actually a lot of free tools for like doing NLU, and Microsoft provides a lot of tools as well, like the bot framework. And so using some of the existing platforms out there, we were able to prototype fairly quickly. And in terms of actually scaling up, I think that's something that we can worry about once people actually do like it or use it, yeah.
Congratulations on like building something and going so far with it. I will say like one of the things that immediately jumped out to me is that this use case for chatbots actually makes a ton of sense insofar as like there really is an interaction problem with all of these different tools that you use to manage workflow, and you sort of when you get put it into the freelance life, you have to manage all these different inputs, basically. So I actually see the use case there being really compelling, and this is like an instance where you can actually take a lot of complexity out of the system by just creating one natural interface for all these different things. The thing that I wonder about further down the line, though, is that chatbots tend to be a little bit restrictive in terms of how they view the flow of information, right? They're not yet able to handle a process that's messy or different every time. It very much has to draw you through like this flow of like you do A, B, C, then D, right? And then the question then is like for a user, as a human user whose process may or may not fit into that flow every time, like what I do think could actually keep you interacting with this thing is actually if it handles a lot of stuff that you would just rather never having to handle, like integrations with doing your taxes, things like that. And so like to me, that's like where the rubber meets the road in terms of real use cases, like whether or not you can actually dissolve a lot of that complexity further down the line that will make me willing to adjust my workflow to the limitations of the chatbot.
Yeah, I have a Warren named Jane, and she's based in New York right now, and I'm in Portland, and our interaction is very similar to what you described there. And I love that, I mean, for me, Jane, you know, like a lot of creative people, I really hate dealing with money. And Jane, like Warren, is sort of, I think the warmth and the, you know, lack of judgment and and the support there's such important features for this. So I commend you for sort of making that a top priority. And then all sorts of questions. I'd be happy, by the way, to share my Jane experiences if you need any more input for Warren. Interested in, you know, yeah, is it connected to your bank account? Will it take out what you need for taxes and all that stuff? So it seems like something, you know, many of us could take advantage of, and congratulations.
Two quick questions then. One is, so when did you reach Fusion? Like, when did you start using Warren yourself, and have you? And if so, what does Warren tell you about how to monetize this?
So the first question was, the idea really came up because of this anxiety that crept over a lot of us, I think, since we were last semester in grad school and trying to figure out, you know, next up, and we want to be independent. And I had done a lot of freelancing myself before, and this was a big pain point. And just thinking about that and talking to a classmate who said how her friend hates spreadsheet, and she's like, oh, she can't do all this stuff because she hates spreadsheet, and that got me really nervous, and I started a panic attack because I hated spreadsheet too. And so I was like, if only this thing exists, and I can just, you know, let it handle that for me. So that was, I would definitely use Warren. That's answering.
Given where you said you were in the project, I would have the impression that you would actually be using it now to manage the project itself, to bootstrap. And I'm just curious, are you doing that?
No, I'm not doing that right now. Yeah, it's not ready for the whole workflow right now, but we're testing with people, and part of it is using me and somebody else who are acting as human agents in the back end to really figuring out, like you said, like how do you customize the design for their workflow. So if I use it, it would be me asking a question and me answering, yeah. And then the second question was?
Monetization.
Oh, I think that's a really good question. Yeah, so I guess that would be what I'll figure out in Botcamp. It's 10 weeks, so hopefully by the end I'll have an answer to that question.
Because that was the final slide.
Thank you. Thank you.